Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a well-known author and an accomplished coach from Hong Kong, Nidhi Kush Shah. Nidhi, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here with the Brand Called You community. Thank you, Ashutosh.
Thank you. Thank you, Nidhi. Nidhi is an author, an executive coach, and a speaker. And as an author, and all of you know, I'm very partial to authors. She's an author of a book titled Becoming Bold, Brave, and Brilliant. And today we're going to speak to Nidhi about her book and coaching. So, Nidhi, before we start talking about your book, tell me a little bit about your own journey, uh, from becoming an executive to becoming an executive coach, and what inspired this transformation.
Sure. Thank you so much for inviting me to reflect and share on my journey. I think it became that journey started decades ago at the age of 13 when my father took me to a seminar at an organization called Ahmedabad Management Association. I grew up in India in a city called Ahmedabad. And I was really inspired by the speaker, and the speaker talked about achieving our dreams and tackling our beliefs and things like that. And I was only 13 at the time, but when I walked out of that seminar, I came home and I told my parents that I hope one day I become a motivational speaker and an author like the
Wow.
ones that we just met.
Mm.
But of course, as life evolved, I ended up doing my electronics and communication engineering, graduated as an
Yeah.
engineer.
Mm.
And then after 4 years, I realized that my true calling was not technology, even though I enjoyed it. And so I began the quest of self-awareness. What is it that I wanted to do? And that landed me in a job with an Australian university called the University of Western Sydney and VIEC, which was an educational consulting firm. And that was my first introduction to career coaching students to be in an
Mm.
international student and international study environment. I was doing staff training, I was doing branding, and that was my very first job out of university and my exposure to a human-centric approach to business and management.
Mm.
And so fast forward to 2011, when I moved to Hong Kong, I decided to start my own practice
Mm.
of training programs and coaching. I launched my own company called Alchemy Consulting. And over the last 15 years, I've been building the business, growing my coaching, growing my speaking practice,
Mm.
and evolving as a coach myself.
Okay.
And in 2013, 14, I became a first-time parent. And, around the same time, I had the pressures of being a first-time mom, trying to grow my business. And, all of that led me in the direction of mindfulness practice. And that's how this step-by-step transformation, different pivotal moments
Mm.
brought me to where I am today of being a coach and a speaker and a mindfulness practitioner.
Amazing. What an amazing journey. And thank you for sharing this with us. You're
Thank you.
also fond of writing poetry and short stories.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
has your passion for writing
Hmm.
influenced your work as a coach and a mindfulness teacher?
Thank you. So, you know, as we know that what is it that connects all the individuals and the soul within us, and that is poetry and stories. And for centuries, humans have actually relied on stories and poems to convey emotions, express themselves, and pass on wisdom.
Right.
And even if we think about it, Ashutosh, one of our most ancient Indian scriptures,
Mm.
Sri Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna wanted to pass on wisdom to Arjun, Gita was recited and then written in the poetic structure.
So,
So, poetry has always fascinated me. I've learned so much. And Robert Frost beautifully put it that a poetry is when an emotion finds a thought and a thought finds a word.
mm.
And in coaching and in mindfulness practice, that is precisely what we want to create,
Mm.
a space for our emotions to find the thoughts and our thoughts to find words. We create that space for awareness, of diving deeper, of pausing, of learning wisdom in an uncomplicated way. And that is why I'm so passionate about weaving poetry, stories in my coaching, in my
Mhm.
mindfulness practice,
Mhm.
because they are relatable, they're emotional, and they connect all of us.
What a great response. Thank you. As you were talking, I was thinking, I have written 9 books. I've got 2 more under publication, but I've never been
Fantastic.
able to write poetry. And I always look up to people who can actually express themselves in poems, So that's fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you
So,
so much.
Nidhi, let's now talk about your book, Becoming Bold, Brave, and
Mm,
Brilliant.
yeah.
You chose a unique format
Mm,
combining poetry, prose, and journaling prompts.
mm,
Why
mm.
this approach?
Thank you. Ashutosh, when I started writing this book 5 years ago, initially I was expressing all the thoughts, what I wanted to convey to the readers. Sometimes it came out as short poems, sometimes it came out as short stories from my own personal journey. And as I was writing it, I would always end the whatever my writing session with a
Mm,
question.
mm,
What is it that I'm getting out of this? And what is it that when maybe perhaps when my friend or my brother or my husband, my daughter, my son, when they read this poem, what is the question I want them to ask themselves? And being a coach, as we love questions, we love a good question. And
mm,
so as the book began to take shape, I realized that I wanted to weave in poetry, short passages, and questions together in a
mm.
unique format where someone could go through those verses and experience an emotion or a thought,
Yeah.
and then end it with a question for
Mm.
self reflection. So that was the intention behind weaving them all together.
Fascinating. Your book also encourages readers to build greater self awareness.
Hmm.
Why is self awareness critical for personal and professional success?
Thank you. It's such a beautiful question, and I love this because really, if it's often hard to pick and attribute one particular factor for success.
Yeah.
So many things have to come together to reach our personal definition of success, which could be different for everybody. And that is, however, if I have to pick one key cornerstone habit
Mm,
to which I can attribute my own definition of success that I
mm,
have found in my life, and that would be self-reflection and self-awareness.
mm,
When if I just draw back to the story I shared with you about my life,
mm.
after engineering, if I hadn't paused to self-reflect that, and I had a great job offer,
Mm.
in back in India,
Yeah.
campus placements used to
Mm,
be the in
mm,
thing. So I had a great job offer. But if I look back, I often wonder, Ashutosh, that if I hadn't paused to self-reflect and ask myself that, is this what I want from my career? Even at that age of 22, when I
mm.
was starting out, I perhaps would have made different life
Correct.
choices.
Correct.
Even now, at every stage, when I became a parent, when I started my business, I look back and I see that when I pause, when I reflect, when I become aware of what are my strengths, what are my core values, it helps me stay aligned
Mm,
to who I want to be in the world. What are my highest goals? And again, what is my definition of success? So
mm.
when I see someone else going on their own path, if I'm very aligned to my values, I won't stray. I won't think, oh, perhaps I should chase that.
Yeah.
And so often in leadership and in life,
Mm,
coming back to ourselves and becoming more self-aware
mm.
can be really can become the guiding force, can become the guiding light. And that's why I think it's so important.
Absolutely. Very well said. You also speak about releasing the fear of other people's judgments, Nidhi.
Hmm.
What's one actionable step someone can take today toward
Hmm.
that?
Hmm. Thank you so much. And if I may admit that this is something that I've also continuously worked on for many years. We all measure our success by conventional parameters like, what will the teacher say? What are my clients saying? What are my employers saying? And we often seek external validation, and that's quite a human element. And so I would love to share some actionable tools. But may I share one foundation practice that I I figured was so helpful even before I put anything in action. And that was bringing a self-compassionate response
Mm,
to that fear of judgment.
mm,
So what I realized that when I was judging myself for being afraid of judgment, or when we judge ourselves like, why am I thinking like this? Anything we do after that,
mm,
it becomes like a push-pull. But
mm,
when we make fear our friend, whether it's fear of judgment or fear of, others' opinions, I made it a friend. And then I
mm,
said, okay, I acknowledge you. I know you are here. You're trying to protect me. Now
mm,
let's deal with it.
mm,
So that is one foundation thing I would like to invite all our listeners
mm,
to bring that compassion to
mm,
whatever fear they are experiencing. And then when it comes to an actionable tool, I often, whenever our mind goes into that, let's say I'm coming for this, for our conversation today,
mm,
and perhaps while walking to our meeting, I'm thinking, oh, what if I say something that doesn't resonate with Ashutosh or the listeners? And now I'm starting going on that spiral of fear
mm,
of other people's
mm,
opinions. I pause myself and I ask myself this question:
mm,
what is another alternative that is possible?
mm,
Or what else is possible?
mm,
And I shift my mind from all the negative scenarios that are probably running in our mind to what else is possible. Perhaps I would be true to myself, or it's possible that I share my experience and one listener will resonate with it. And so when I ask myself, what else is possible that can go in my favor, when I'm afraid of other people's opinions, I
mm.
can bring myself to different possibilities and I can yank myself out of that spiral and come back to the present moment.
Oh, wonderful. Great response. The other
Thank
thing
you.
that Nidhi you speak about is self-worth.
Hmm.
And, whether it's self-worth or an imposter syndrome,
Hmm.
a lot of people struggle with this. How does your
Yeah.
book address this challenge?
Yeah, thank you. In fact, there are several messages in the book because, they say research is me search.
Yeah.
So every time in the last 5 years, whenever I had a thought which would lead me to imposter syndrome or doubting myself,
Mm,
I worked on figuring out what was working. How can I train my mind? How can I
mm,
train my thoughts to not go into those self-limiting beliefs?
mm,
And there are a few practices that I have found immensely helpful.
mm,
And one of them being creating a success folder or celebrating our wins.
mm,
So in the book, there is a chapter where I say, let's celebrate even our tiny wins. Because, as humans, we have negativity bias. Our attention often draws to our last failure or what is not working well.
yeah.
And so we make like a journal of where we write like, okay, this is something good that happened. Oh, I was invited by Ashutosh on the
Mm,
Brand Called You podcast. That's a win. It goes in my success folder. So next time when an opportunity presents
mm,
itself, and perhaps I'm doubting my worth. Oh, do I belong there? Am I worthy to be there? Or if someone is experiencing imposter syndrome, it's like, oh
mm,
no, I'm not sure if I can do this.
yeah.
I can go back to those collection, to that repertoire of
Mm,
tiny wins or big wins and remind myself that, yeah, I've done this before and I'm worthy. I have some message to share. The
mm,
core theme of the book is becoming bold, brave, and brilliant in our own self and really waking up to the boldness and braveness that is already within us. You
very,
know,
very interesting.
stop seeking external
Yeah.
validation and really giving ourselves the permission to belong and own our strengths. So
Mm.
that is the message that the book
It's such
wants to
such an
convey.
amazing answer because you've built in not just journaling, but I also heard gratitude,
Yeah,
and how gratitude can actually build strength in
yeah,
ourselves.
yes,
You know,
that's right.
very, very
That's
fascinating. Thank you so much.
you. Thank
Nidhi
you.
also discusses developing the inner strength to pursue important goals.
Hmm.
Can you
Hmm.
share for my viewers and listeners a
Hmm.
strategy for strengthening this inner resolve?
Yeah. For sure. So one of the things that comes to mind when we talk about inner strength, we think about tough people, that, we have this image. But I want, and that is true,
Yeah.
but I want to invite listeners to think that inner strength can take various forms. It can be quiet, it can be resolute, it can be loud. Sometimes we hear it as a whisper,
Mm,
sometimes we hear it as a scream. And one of the ways that we develop that inner strength is by trying to develop this relationship with us. One is when we forgive ourselves for our mistakes,
mm,
when we are kinder to ourselves. One of the reasons why sometimes we hold ourselves back, why people hold themselves back, is because we're afraid we'll make a mistake, we'll
mm,
fail. And when we realize that that's okay, when we reframe that mistake is a stepping stone, as we have all heard
mm,
perhaps 1,000 times, but when we actually put it in practice, we have this strength that, okay, whether it goes good or bad,
mm,
I'm going to be okay. So
mm,
when we give ourselves permission, those kind of permissions, and develop that self-compassionate relationship with ourselves, we
mm,
become more equanimous. We attach less to the result. And when we are attached less to the outcome, we have this inner strength, we have this inner confidence that today I can convey my message,
mm,
and whether that message comes out very fluently or it comes out broken,
mm,
I'm still going to survive tomorrow and I'll still show up tomorrow.
mm.
That is the kind of inner strength it builds when we give ourselves permission. So this is
Fantastic.
one technique I found very helpful.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Two more questions relating to your book, then I want to move to coaching and
Mhm.
mindfulness.
Thank
What is
you.
one bold action you hope readers will take after reading your book?
Thank you. One bold action that I want to invite the readers to take
Mm,
is to really acknowledge,
mm,
write down what is their biggest, boldest dream or goal,
mm,
and then take any step,
mm,
take any action. You know, I don't know if this is still very popular, but when I was growing up, when I was setting up my business, Ashutosh, often I used to hear this phrase outside, go big or go home. I completely disagree with that sentiment.
mm,
All the science that I have read about habit formation and progress is take one step, take any step.
mm,
So sometimes we just think about 10 different scenarios. We wait to figure out the entire path
mm,
before we even take the first step.
mm,
So what I actually want is for the readers to even pause the book. If they
mhm,
are reading, don't wait until they finish.
mm,
Pause, put it on the side, and take any step today that casts a vote towards the person they want to be.
mm.
That is what I would invite the
Amazing.
readers.
Amazing. And one more question relating to your book, and this is addressed to you. I mean, I know you're the author, and therefore every message is important. But
Hmm,
which of the messages in your book
hmm.
resonates the most with you personally?
Thank you so much. So this is such an interesting question, and really one needs to dig deeper to answer this.
Yeah.
And I realized that there is one message. As you are asking me this, I realize there is one message that is still work in action for me. And if I may share that, that
Yeah.
is asking for help
Mm.
and not believing that we have to do everything by ourselves.
How amazing.
Um,
Yeah.
Sometimes we put so much pressure on ourselves. We believe that we have all these narratives that if I ask for help, I may come across as incompetent. If I ask for help, I may come across as selfish, or I need to be able to do everything by myself.
Mm.
But that thinking is not true. We rise together. We often rise by involving other people, by
Yeah.
collaborating and asking for help.
Correct.
That is one that deeply resonates with me,
Correct.
and
And
it's work in progress.
absolutely. And you're so right. I mean, most of us find it very difficult to say, hey, can you help me?
Yeah,
So, very, very strong and powerful message. Thank you. Let's now
thank
talk
you.
about coaching and mindfulness.
Mhm.
When you're coaching leaders, what is the most common obstacle you see them face, and how
Mhm.
do you help?
Sure. So, one of the things that comes quite often in coaching conversations is um, this belief that, oh, I am like this. We
Mm,
tend to attach labels to
mm,
ourselves, that I'm someone who has always
yeah.
procrastinated, or I'm
Mm,
someone who is always or I'm perfectionist, or I'm this, I'm that. I hear a lot of labels. So I'm not confident, as if those are eternal truths scribed in stone. But when we remind ourselves that this is actually a thought which has been repeated so many times that it has become a belief, and that belief, it has now become a truth, when we question that, oh, this may or may not be true about myself. Perhaps this is what worked for me earlier. Perhaps this is how I was in certain phases of my life and career, but I can change from here.
Mm.
And so that mindset shift,
Mhm.
that we are always evolving, this whole concept of neuroplasticity, that our brains are always growing. In my coaching conversations, you ask this beautiful question, how do I support?
Mm.
I feel that in a transformative coaching session conversation, the first step is to always create space to really challenge those limiting beliefs and first even become aware. Like, oh, what are those beliefs that could be holding me back?
Mm.
Because at that level, at that stage, it's not often the skill. Anyone can look up, read a book, go on. There's so much information. Knowledge is not what holds us back. We live in a knowledge age.
Yeah.
What holds us back sometimes is how we are thinking about ourselves. So that I find is the first step and common obstacle.
Amazing. Time for two more questions for you. What
Thank
role
you.
does accountability play in
Hmm,
achieving meaningful transformation?
hmm,
How do you help your clients or coaches to stay
hmm.
accountable?
Thank you. Such a beautiful question. And accountability, and more importantly, self accountability is everything. And so I see it helps us stay true. Accountability is, responsibility towards ourselves, towards our goals. And so coaching is this beautiful partnership where the client, the coachee, the person who is working on their goals, we create an environment where they can take their own accountability. When they realize that they themselves are fully responsible, and they can create the outcome they want when they take full total responsibility, then there is no looking back.
Mm.
And so the way we do this in a coaching conversation is by creating a tool called accountability structure.
Mm.
And it's not about me saying, okay, so let's say I'm coaching Nidhi. It's not about me saying, Nidhi, you must submit or you must let me know by next Tuesday. That kind of a relationship doesn't work, as you yourself will know, in a coaching. So
Mm.
we say, okay, what is going to help you to, we ask a series of questions like, by when would you like and
Mm.
to achieve this, and who are the people who can support you, and even asking them a question like, how can I help you stay accountable? Would you like me to remind you? How would you like me to challenge you, nudge you when we see that we are not being able to stay accountable? And then they would often tell me, it would be great if you can check in with me in 3 weeks. And if I still haven't negotiated with my manager or whatever is their goal, then we have a conversation. And so that is how we build this accountability structure that
Fascinating.
helps them stay true.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And my last question for you,
Mhm.
could you share a simple mindfulness exercise you regularly recommend to your clients?
Thank you so much. I'm so happy you asked me this question because so and this is something that I practiced as well
Mm.
before our meeting started. I call this meeting ourselves
Mm.
before meeting others.
Mm.
So it's a 1 or 2 minutes, doesn't matter how much time we have, but it's a simple mindfulness exercise
Mm.
where before we enter a meeting, whether
Mm.
it's a phone call, whether we are going home to meet our family, whether
Yeah.
we are entering office to meet our colleagues, we take this one quiet moment,
Mm.
a minute or two, and instead of that final check of emails or swiping our phone before just entering, I say put that away and we meet ourselves. We take a deep breath in, take a deep breath out. Just I set an intention that may I be fully present
Mm.
today, or may I be calm? And just setting that small
Yeah.
intention.
Yeah.
I have experienced, and my clients have shared with me that that just changes the entire mindset and that frame of reference with which they enter a new task. So
Mm.
this is an exercise, very simple, just takes a minute. I share this with everyone, even with my kids and my clients.
And I think this is a very powerful message again. to all our viewers and listeners. I love your term, meeting yourself before meeting others, or meeting ourselves before meeting others. On that note, Nidhi, thank you so much for speaking to me about your own amazing journey from an engineer to an author to a poet to a coach and working on mindfulness. We covered a lot of very interesting ground on your book, Becoming
Thank you.
Bold, Brave, and Brilliant, about your poetry, prose, and journaling, about creating greater self awareness. You gave me some very interesting thoughts on self worth and imposter syndrome. And then, of course, we talked a lot about coaching and mindfulness. Thank you for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Thank you so much. I really hope that even one listener will take away something, and that is my definition of success. Thank you for giving me a chance to be here today.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.